Thank you, councillors, staff, members of the public. Thank you for tuning in. I declare this meeting open at 5:30, and doing so I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, the Wadandi Noongar people, and pay our respects to elders past, present and the future. There are no announcements from myself, and we are all here. We have one declaration of interest, which is in the agenda, councillors. Is there any other declarations of interest? Councillor Gassett. Impartial interest, Councillor Gassett on item 10.24. Thank you. Just pass that to the note taker at some stage. Thank you, Councillor Gassett. Are there any other declarations of interest?
Yes, sir. I've driven sprint cars on a VIP day there too.
Is that impartial interest?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Are there any other declarations of interest? Just get you to fill that form out when you get a chance. Thanks, Councillor Steck. Public question time. Councillors, we have 3 questions from Mr. Bernard Bishop. Bernard, would you like to come ask your questions, or are you happy for us to read them out, or would you like to come ask your questions? This is your chance. Bernard? Sure, I'll read the questions. I did have them here somewhere, and I'll get the CEO to answer. So, questions are from Mr. Bernard Bishop of... The address is not in there, but he's a Bunbury resident. Question 1. Considering the positions of the DPIRD RE listing of flea banes, is it possible for the city to create emergency regulations that enable it to force landowners to control flea banes in their land, or alternatively to enable council to enter and work on private property? Is that question on the screen? Thank you, Liam. Mr. CEO, do you have the response for that?
Yes, through Mr. Mayor. The Department of Primary Industry and Regional Development is the only regulatory authority that can enforce the management of declared pests on private property. As part of the development of a weed management strategy, the city could consider the introduction of a pest plant local law that would give the city the power to enforce weed control measures on private land. However, that process could take up to 18 months. The introduction of a local law would also need to consider the ability to enforce that said law.
Thank you. Question 2. Why are so many obvious infestations and single plants let to grow and mature until it is too late to prevent them from flowering and spreading their seeds, which are bound up to infest the whole area? E.g. a few plants near Stirling and Blair Street pedestrian crossing. Why? Mr. CEO.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Parks and Reserves team is responsible for the maintenance of over 300 hectares of parkland and just over 50 hectares of sports grounds, along with significant landscaped areas including traffic islands. The team undertake a number of tasks including mowing, lawn maintenance, landscape maintenance, spraying, playing ground maintenance, hard landscape maintenance, etc. The past 12 months have seen a number of issues result in a less than satisfactory level of service in weed management, with the failure of a key contract and significant weather, including late rains and perfect growing conditions. This has seen the team applying multiple spray runs on various locations over a number of months. This has also seen a number of areas missed. The team are currently investigating ways to ensure that we are capable of handling these issues if the same circumstances occur again, including the addition of a spray unit on our road sweeper truck.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. And the third question, is it appreciated that flea banes are particularly difficult to control for their incredible numbers of feather-light seeds, easily spread by mowing, difficult to pull, dangerous to pull along busy roads, able to grow and produce seeds anywhere and through most of the year? Response, thanks, Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, the city appreciates that flea bane is particularly difficult to control and is currently working on the eradication of the weed in different areas throughout the city. Optimum management for this particular species is in spring. Unfortunately, late rains during this spring meant that weed management could not be undertaken during the optimum management window.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Thank you, Bernard, for those questions, and those questions and answers will appear in the minutes. Councillors, could I have some confirmation for the previous minutes as per 7.11 there? Mover, thank you, Councillor Giles. Seconder, thank you, Councillor Quain. I'll put that. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. And the minutes of the advisory committees, councillors, 7.12, the Policy Review and Development Committee. Can somebody have a move at that one? Thank you, Councillor Kozisek. A seconder? Councillor Steck, thank you. I'll put that. All those in favour? Councillor Quain, thank you. That's carried. And could we have somebody move the minutes of the annual electors meeting, please, councillors? 7.13. Councillor Quain, thank you. Councillor Yip, a seconder. Put that. All in favour? That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. There are no petitions or presentations. We have 3 deputations, councillors. Firstly, on item 10.2.1, Mr. Brian Rediger will be speaking. All those in favour of Mr. Brian Rediger speaking? Thank you. That's approved. Glenda Kingdon will be speaking to item 10.2.3. All those approve? That's carried. Now, I know Glenda's not here at the moment, and I've mentioned we will push her item back if need be, but she shouldn't be far away. And lastly, Mr. Paul Stubber speaking on item 10.2.4. All those in favour, please indicate. That's carried. Thank you. And those speakers, when we get to your item, we'll ask you to come up. So, dealing with the agenda tonight, councillors, coming out for discussion, and there was a couple that somebody just mentioned to me, so hopefully I'll get them all. But coming out, we have item 10.1.8, 10.1.10, 10.2.1, 10.2.3, 10.2.4, and 10.3.2. Councillor Quain, you did indicate another one you would like to come out. What item was that? 10.2.2. 10.2.2, thank you. 10.3.1. Are there any other items coming out for discussion, councillors? All happy? If that's the case, could I have somebody move the remainder removed en bloc? Thank you, Councillor Steck. Seconded by Councillor McCleary. I'll put those. All in favour? They are carried unanimously. Thank you very much. So, first item, councillors, 10.1.8. This is the review of the council policy elected members' entitlements. Do I have a mover for that? Yes, Councillor Steck. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Kozisek. Likely to be debate, councillors? Yes. Councillor Steck, I'll ask you to speak if you would like.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, I'll take this off. Just that the City of Bunbury has not had many pay rises in relation to Band 1 for many, many years in the level of payments that all other level 1s have. The other thing we don't have is lots of other things like $250 for dry cleaning a year that Bustleton has. They're in a very, very substantial list of lots of other things. So, and the cost of communications, the cost of representing the community has now become more litigious than ever. We also need to make sure that we are promoting ourselves as key business leaders of community, and at the moment it is before the Salaries and Wages Commission again. So I would urge councillors to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Steck. Councillor Kozisek.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've considered this quite heavily because I know we had some debate on this previously, but elected councillors put their hand up for this job for a reason, and it's because we care. We care about our community and we care about its ratepayers. We are called upon to turn up, to participate, to initiate, to communicate and to help. And we do it because we care. We attend meeting after meeting, talk to our community daily, and at times have to put aside our own paid work to accommodate those needs. Sometimes our families suffer. My husband often says to me when he's home, you see more of the councillors than you see of me. So we do this with great enthusiasm because we really do care, but I think it's time that we were given the right consideration for this. For many years, Bunbury's elected members sat at 35% of the band, which I think is really an undervaluing of our time and our energy. Now, you're all familiar with the saying, pay peanuts and you get monkeys, and I don't for 1 minute suggest that we have monkeys here, but let's be fair. For those that, if we want to attract and engage a younger audience and a younger member of councillors, I think we need to actually make this something that is really quite financially compensating. I don't say rewarding, but compensates for the time that we've lost. This is an absolutely amazing task that we all perform, and as I said, we do it because we care, we love it, we enjoy it, but there are times when it means that we have to balance our own home budgets because there's not enough money in the coffers simply because of that. I don't think that's fair. To increase their band payment to the full 100%, as most other regional cities and shires have, seems to me to just be common sense thing to do. This money is spent in our community. All of us spend our money in our communities. We support local businesses and we support everybody, and I think it helps the economy of Bunbury go around. The staff are given their CPI increase every year. We don't debate that. We don't need to debate it because I think they're entitled to it. I think that's important. And we are sometimes asked if this will pass the pub test. Now, I might ask that about some of the other things that are passed in this area, but we won't go there. I think that as councillors and as elected members, I think we are a valued member of the community, and I think we need to value ourselves and each other very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kozisek. Speaker against Councillor Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, I'll pull this down. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And first off, I would like to acknowledge, Mr. Mayor, the comments made by the mover and seconder, and I do take them into consideration. But please take my point of view as well, that it is very hard for a newly appointed elected member, and it's obviously an issue that we constantly have every 2 years, to come in and approve a 10% pay increase, as it was, remuneration, sorry, I shouldn't use the word pay, plus the potential 4% coming from the tribunal later this year. We do mention the pub test, and thank you, Councillor Kozisek, for mentioning that. And it's very hard for me to support a motion at the moment that gives us a potentially 14% pay rise over in the current circumstances. We're about to enter into another time of uncertainty with COVID. We are seeing businesses struggling already. That is going to have knock-on effects to people's ability to pay their rates, and it's just not a good look. However, I have given it much thought, and I do appreciate that some members have been in this chamber a lot longer than I have and have put a lot more effort in over many years. So, Mr. Mayor, if this is voted down, I'd like to foreshadow a motion that the raise to 100% happens over 2 years. The reason I say this is 75% this year, 100% next year. This takes it up to 100% of the band 1 before the next election takes place, which means this conversation hopefully won't ever happen again. So we are given the opportunity for the next round of councillors to come in with a fresh slate. We're taking 5% over the next 2 years, so I'm offering a middle ground, and I'd just like some members to take that in consideration. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Andrew. Is there a speaker for the recommendation? Councillor Giles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just briefly, I would like to endorse what the other councillors, the mover and seconder of this motion. I have been in this chamber for quite a long time, since 2013, and well, with a little break, but since that time. And the raise in our fees or allowance have been minute and sometimes nil. So I think it's time that we recognise the work that's been done, as Councillor Kozisek has said. I know that some people look at nominating to be a councillor and then look at what that's going to do to their ability to work in their business or to work in their job. I know for a fact I've dropped 2 days a week of my work to be able to do this job properly, and I wouldn't be able to do that if we weren't being in some way compensated for that. And I think young people with families, I think it's really important that women and young people are attracted to these roles. So I hope that you will endorse this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Giles. Is there a speaker against? Councillor Gassett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's a book says how to win friends and influence people. I probably won't be applying that tonight. Mr. Mayor, speaking against the motion, I've been here 3 months and wow, I'm getting a pay rise already. I don't believe I've actually earned what I'm already collecting. But let's talk about justification of a pay rise in this environment. I believe it's inappropriate. So I'll ask the councillors, and perhaps the public can see the last page on the strategic community plan, right down the bottom there, that shows the performance decided upon feedback from about 1,000 people that undertook the survey of council, 2019 compared to 2021. So it's not this council, the previous council. On 5 of the 8 indicators, we've actually gone backwards to what we were in 2019. 6 of the indicators, we are actually less than the low end of the state average in performance, according to those indicators. So I'm not sure how we can justify this, but because I like using statistics, and that's what I've come up with. I say inappropriate at this time, as Councillor Andrew said. There's businesses since the start of February in Bunbury starting to run on 50% because of COVID, and there's a bit of uncertainty around. Also, you know, if we start setting the standard to go to 100% of what we're eligible for right at this point of time, and don't forget we've still got, and maybe I shouldn't tread in the area, but we've got 300 staff, and we're going to start setting the standards for compensation. So, my suggestion is, councillors, performance is not that crash hot, but we've got a new team. We've got a young mayor who's full of energy. He's got the community's best interest in his sight, I know that. So let's get behind him for a year or two, perform really well, get things done, and come back and ask for a pay rise. In the meantime, the $75,000 that it's going to cost, yes, it's pittance. Let's round it up to 100, and maybe set up a little fund to help businesses through this COVID period. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Gassett. Is there a speaker for? Councillor McCleary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't going to speak. However, I've decided I will, so I haven't got anything prepared. So I'm sorry if I jump around a little bit muddled up. But excuse me, people, I'm trying to do a debate out of my head and I'm not really good at it, so please give me space. Timing is something that is not an issue. There's always going to be councillors who have just joined the ranks of a council. So timing has to be not considered in this particular time. I've been a councillor for 8.5 years. I haven't got up and asked for many rises, but at the time I have always supported them, not because I'm money hungry, not because I'm poor, but because I value what I have to offer. And I think if you undervalue yourself, you will underwork. And I think that is a real possibility. We're going to be, and I'm looking in the glass ball, a smaller council within a few years, whereby we'll be reduced to maybe 10 councillors. Their workload is going to be quite a lot. And the people whom are going to be looking at coming on, they need to be better skilled than I was 8.5 years ago, okay? Because they need more training. We're going to be upskilling ourselves all the time. And if you're going to do that think someone's going to throw away 30 hours a week of their job where they're getting paid very well to come on to council and not get some reasonable money for it, they won't feel they've been valued, and you won't get the skilled people that we require for Bunbury running as the beautiful city and progressive city that we want it to be, because we're going to be stuck in planning, we're going to understand that more. There's so much more training that we're going to have to do. It's not now, and I'm sorry if I insult anybody and it's just an old school terminology. This is not a boys' club anymore. This is really business, and we really need to have people around the table here who know the business. And in order to do that, to get those people, to get the younger people, and I think in my last time that I argued this 3 or 4 years ago, I said to attract younger people, they like money. Simple as that, okay? So let's put it on the table, and we're not asking for a lot. $77,000 a year is not a lot of money to be found in a budget of 80 million. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maveri. I think you should not prepare speeches more often. Is there a speaker against?
Can I ask a question?
You can.
Curious.
Stand up, please. Stand up, please, Councillor.
Just a question through you, Mr Mayor. The local government reform, will they be reviewing this and will they be considering superannuation on top of what we're doing here tonight?
Superannuation is being considered through the local government reform at the moment. We have our response to that last week, so that will be reviewed during the reform, yes, in terms of that works off the salary and tribunal allowance, so that will continue throughout. Any other speakers against? You've inspired me, Councillor McCurry, and I wasn't planning on speaking either, but I will speak against. And again, I didn't plan to because I didn't want to offend anybody in any way, and I know that the councillors in this room are all doing an incredible job, and I do thank them for that. And I know that Councillor Cook stood in this chamber one stage talking about this exact issue and the hours he put in, and equated to, I think it was around $6.16 an hour he was on for the work he was doing, and I have no doubt that everyone in this room is doing the same thing, and I fully appreciate that, and I want to continue to appreciate that. That's why I'm a little bit torn here, because I want to support you guys in your endeavours. But I do agree with Councillor Andrews' comments, and the timing conversation does always come up, and when is the right time, but I think phasing this in would be a better approach to this setup. Rather than going for that. So that would be my thoughts, and that's the reason I'd be voting against it in this thing, to look at an alternative that Councillor Andrew has foreshadowed, that we look at phasing that in, and that would be my thoughts on that. Is there a speaker for? Councillor Steck.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll start by saying that lots of people have contributed some valuable comments, and when I started, I was a lot younger. It was 2006. I've been here ever since. And when I first started in Collie before here, for a 4-year stint, I was much younger, and everybody in that room was over 75 or thereabouts. One other female, the president. And she'd been there for 35 years on her own. I do not want to go back to those dark days. They were very bleak. And even so, they used to put her at the end to make her stoke the fire. So the valuable contribution that women can bring to this chamber is tenfold or 100-fold. And the other thing is, when I first started, there was no compliance. Nothing. Didn't have to undertake training. Didn't even have to abide by regulations, codes of conduct even. It was just a given to give people respect. So the level of training that all the councillors have to do now by state legislation has changed the role considerably. Those councillors that undertook training with our facilitator, she even said, when I said the role of councillor has changed. It's no longer just standing up for someone in your suburb for roads, rubbish, footpaths, and dividing fences matters and trees. It's far more sophisticated than that. Far, far more. And everybody in this position knows that anyone that's become to this council has had a steep learning curve, more than they anticipated. And that would be fair to say. So I respect all of you. You deserve what you get. in the sense of remuneration. Just for the audience, we don't get $77,000 a year, it's actually $31,000. So for all the time that we put in and provide. And even meetings, yesterday I went to the meeting for an hour, and other meetings throughout the community, every week. Phone calls every week. A lot of my time is taken up. But I do it because I love it. Sometimes it's frustrating, sometimes it's annoying. We win some, we lose some, but we keep going. So I urge you to support the motion.
Thank you, councillors. I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please indicate. 1, 2, 3. Those against? That motion is carried. Do you need the names there, sorry, Len? Oh, you got that? Got it? Thank you. Item 10.1.10, councillors. Councillor Andrew. Oh, sorry. Is there a mover? Councillor Andrew. A seconder? Councillor Gassett. Councillor Andrew.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I better put my remuneration to good work. Firstly, Mr Mayor, I'd like to thank the Policy Committee for reaffirming the City's local opportunities at City Runs Events policy. I wanted to highlight the importance of this policy, mainly in regards to supporting the Bungeo-based performers at City Run Events. Now, the City has had a long history in supporting local arts. Events such as the Bunbury of Stedford, which originally started in 1914, has been a fundamental institution which has helped to develop the local live performance industry. But, Mr Mayor, as many comments have been, COVID-19 has decimated the industry during the pandemic. The Department of Local Government and Sport and Cultural Industries 2021 survey of the creative arts sector, which includes visual artists, musicians, writers, actors, dancers and performers, found that jobs in the sector fell by 77%, with freelancers the worst hit, a 94% drop in opportunities. With that, saw a 70% decrease in earnings. With the available support like the JobKeeper, many only earned 53% of expected revenue. And now, with the restrictions increasing again, events are being cancelled once again, and the industry in WA is under immense pressure once more. That is why this policy is so important, and that during the current pandemic and post the outbreak, when life returns to normal, it is important that we continue to support our region's performing arts, especially at our major events like Christmas in the City and the Australia Day Skyworks. After all, what is Australia Day in our city? It is a day where we welcome the greatest number of new citizens into our community. It's a day when we celebrate and recognise those outstanding citizens of our community and the work that they do, and it's the day that we bring together thousands of people to celebrate the city of Bunbury. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Andrew. Councillor Gassett.
Just quickly, Mr Mayor. I'm getting people, business people in particular, tapping me on my shoulder and saying, look, we need to attract people into the city, more events, those sort of people that I was hoping we would support in the previous motion. So, Mr Mayor, perhaps what we need here in this events policy is that we need to implement some vigour. And yes, we know about COVID, but implement some vigour, get a bit more creative and bring people to help our local community and our local businesses. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor Gassett. Is there a speaker against? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Councillor Quain, to the favour, yep. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Ten to 1. Mr. Redinger. You can, Brian, thank you, and you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, Mayor, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. By way of introduction, Brian Redinger. I'm a Bunbury resident. I've owned property here since 2008, but full-time resident for the past 7 years. 6 years as owner of Southwest Tourist Services, which provides tours and charter transport throughout the entire Southwest region and up to Perth and Perth Airport. So I have significant tourism and visitation experience. And in fact, I got in on the ground floor on Bunbury tourism when there was a committee formed and the community got involved in it, planning the Bungeo region. So I've been here since the start of the Bungeo region. The motion that's on the screen has 4 points to it. I presented this motion, Bunbury Visitor Center Visitor Servicing Model, at the annual meeting of electors on 1st of February, where I believe it was carried unanimously. By way of background, before I go to point 2, people should be aware that the visitor center staff were relocated in early November to the city office here. So by the next week or two, it's going to be nearly 4 months that they've been put into a temporary location. I won't go into the details as to why they were relocated from the old train station to the city office, but suffice to say, the operation is very inefficient because visitors don't tend to come to the city office, and you can check the numbers on that, and I'm sure you'll verify that. This motion requires a draft report to be prepared by the city staff and to be submitted to the CEO by April 2022. I believe that's Kristen Anderson and her team. As you can see, there are 4 items in the motion. In particular, item 3 requires the city staff to engage key tourism bodies and BVC members, of which I'm one, that's Bunbury Visitor Center members, with visitor experience to provide their input and recommendations to the team. Both visitor servicing for Bunbury and the Bunbury region, Bunbury Geographic region, and the BVC are key. They're both very key to the growth of tourism in the Bungeo region, especially after our WA borders are open very soon to interstate and international visitors, and in conjunction whenever the COVID pandemic subsides. Now, initially, we're going to get 1,000 cases a day or whatever the numbers are going to be for a while until it eventually settles down. I'll come back to that point in a minute. The city's supervisory staff do not have very much experience in managing tourism or visitor center operations. I'm talking about from Kristen and above, okay? Therefore, under item 3 of this motion, I am nominating myself as a seasoned local tour operator, plus another relevant person from Australia's Southwest Regional Tourism Body, to assist and collaborate with the city staff in the preparation and the review of their draft report to the CEO. We simply want to consult with the city and bring our experience to the team so that factors affecting tourism, visitation, and particular visitor center location can be considered. We're simply advisory. All the decisions are going to be made by the city. We just want to be on the city's team as opposed to being on the opposite side of the fence. I personally don't believe that the BBC should be relocated from its old train station central CBD location unless another suitable CBD location with adequate free parking and disabled access is available nearby. Many visitors to Bunbury stay within the CBD area, so walking distance to the BBC is an important consideration, as well as employing experienced and capable visitor center staff. These are very important factors to the BBC members, including myself, because we pay for our membership, and for the growth of visitation to Bunbury and to the Bunbury geographic region at large. Just a side comment here. It's not on my notes, Liam, but I'll put it in and send it to you. About 5 years ago, the BBC was seeing roughly 50,000 visitors a year, being totally accessible, caravan parking out front, located along Blair Street, a major throughway, and having people walk to it, have the ability to walk to it from all corners of the CBD. 50,000 visitors a day. I urge the city not to get caught up in the low numbers that we've seen for the last 2 or 3 years, because that's not what it's all about. It's all due to COVID, and we know that. So for planning purposes, my advice to the city is think big. I'm one of Bunbury's best cheerleaders. Every tour I take out, I brag about Bunbury. Every person I meet, I brag about Bunbury. We all need to do that. And the BBC needs to be at the very center of that tourism growth, because they not only represent Bunbury, but they represent the Bungeo region as well. Thank you. So I support the motion.
Thanks, Brian. Perfect timing. Must have practiced that one. Do we have somebody move the executive recommendation in front of us, councillors? Councillor McCleary? Councillor McCreary, we'll just get this on the table first. Is there a mover for this recommendation? Oh, you're moving? Okay. Is there a seconder? Councillor? Yep. Councillor McCleary.
Just short.
Councillor Quinn?
I'd like to make an amendment.
Sure, take a seat, Councillor McCreary. You have an amendment, Councillor Quinn?
I'd like to add item point 5, that the draft report come to council for approval in June 30.
Do we have a copy of that, Len? Oh, there. Is there a seconder to that amendment? Councillor Giles, and let me just refer to the CEO for one quick second. So, Councillor Quain, that's your amendment there is printed, so the CEO just informed that based on that, that report will come through, which means there won't be a decision made on the location, meaning that the visitor centre will be staying where it is until that time. Is that fine? Okay, is there a seconder to
Excuse me,
that
Mr
amendment?
Mayor, I had an amendment when I hadn't put it in yet.
So, Councillor McCleary, because we have somebody have moved an amendment, we deal with the amendment. So
Okay.
the amendment has been moved, and there's a seconder to that amendment. So basically, we are dealing with a 0.5 at this stage. Who the seconder was? Councillor? Yep. No, Councillor.
No.
Councillor Kozisek. Sorry. So effectively, we're now dealing with a 0.5 as an amendment, Councillor McCleary. So we now debate on this item, item 5. If this is approved, it then forms part of the substantial motion there.
I'd
Councillor
just
Steele,
like to
question?
have a question.
Sure.
But if the report is obviously prior to, is that what Councillor Quain means? That she wants it at least by June 2022, or if the report is earlier, obviously it can be presented to us earlier?
Yep.
I'm not quite sure. I'm going to have clarification.
Changing that to by June 22. Yep. CEO, that's fine. Sure. Question?
The question is, well, first I have to make a statement. My understanding that this is a report, okay,
Yes.
only, and perhaps could we deal with not so much approving that report, because when it actually, the decision comes to where it includes everything in the report, which comes to council eventually, we've kind of locked ourselves in. I was wondering if we could do it through workshop before a resolution comes to, be it that we are going to be moving the visitor centre, be it that the evaluations and alternate locations, all this sort of stuff going on. I just wonder if this is the cart before the horse.
Councillor Curry, you can vote against that to do that, but at the moment
But I'm asking a question.
You're asking the question. Well, the question is that the amendment has been moved, amendment has been seconded, so we vote on this amendment, this item, to form part of the motion. So, Councillor Quain, your amendment is there. You've moved it. Opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would like council to support this amendment because I feel that it would be very beneficial if councillors was involved in this process, because as you can see through those items, there is no possibility for council to be engaged in this motion. So can you please support this amendment?
Thank you. Councillor Kozisek.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I concur with Councillor Quain. I think this is an opportunity for us as councillors to have some input into the report And I also concur with Councillor McCleary that I would like to see us be able to have some input into the report before it goes out as a full report and is passed. I think we have an opportunity to have some say in this. Thank you.
Thank you. So for clarification, councillors, we're dealing with part 5 now, which if this is approved, it goes back to the original motion with 5 parts rather than the 4 parts. Is there a speaker against this amendment? No? I'll put the amendment. Those in favour? Those against? So yep, and Councillor Plum. So that now forms part of the initial motion, which is moved by Councillor McCleary and seconded by... And you had amendment as well? What is your amendment, Councillor McCleary?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. That it goes out to community for consultation before, so they could be number 6, before it comes to council in June 2022.
Could we just get that written up, please? Was there a timeline on that, Councillor McCleary? Let me just refer to the...
No, not really, because consultation, we have rules and regulations of how long it's got to go out there for and sit, so I cannot give that, indicate that without looking at that. I think it's 3 weeks or 10 days, or they would have to ask the CEO on that one if we to go out for community consultation.
Sure, CEO.
Through me, just trying to, I guess, seek some clarification, because point 3 provides for engagement and with key stakeholders, and to do the report, it's hard for the staff to bring forward the date of the report in April, and then to try to get that reconciled and then go to community engagement and then to meet Councillor Quain's amendment to June, I think is going to be a difficult time-wise. I suspect that during the work that staff will do under point 3, I would have hoped that that would cover off on what you're suggesting in terms of some level of engagement.
Perhaps what I'll do is I'll retract that and save it for when, if there are decisions to be made in council, that, especially with the location, at a later date, then we'll have that in as community consultation then.
I'm happy to accept that, Councillor McCleary, and maybe potentially if we go back to the original motion that we have there now, with point 5, maybe Councillor McCleary, you can speak for it and strongly advocate for that position. So we're dealing with the motion now in front of us. Councillor McCleary.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think it is really important, number 1 especially, to look at a comprehensive review of the visiting servicing over Bunbury, and also with the location. I think the location is really important and not to be taken lightly, and we do need a lot of consultation on that one, which includes our community selectively. So I would encourage people to vote for this, because this is a long time coming. Thank you.
Councillor, yep, nothing. Sure.
Thank you. Will the other local stakeholders, because I do think having a visitor centre has involved with just having one in your your city, will that include Shire of Harvey, Dardanup, and things like that as well, to have maybe a joint regional one, or is that a step too far?
I believe, Councillor Steele, that'll be part of the work of dealing with all the key stakeholders, and that conversation we'll have, and I'm getting some nods from CEO, getting some nods from back there as well. So all that work will be undertaken, Councillor Steele.
Thank you.
Is there a speaker against this recommendation? If that's the case, I'll put the recommendation. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. where are we up to? 10.2.2. The recommendation there from the annual meeting is electing. Do we have a mover for that one? Councillor Smith, is there a seconder? Councillor Steele? Councillor Quain?
Can I please make I would like to speak against point 3 as I support the re-establishment of BSAC.
Okay. Councillor Quain, grab a seat. So I did quickly speak to Councillor Quain prior to this. I should have brought that up. And I wasn't prepared to take it as amendment because it was in direct violation of this one, so I've suggested that Councillor Quain have an alternative recommendation. So what I'll be doing is taking these items separately, and we'll work through them from there. So I'll be taking them as 1, 2 and 3. So Councillor Quain, I would suggest you speak against this item and foreshadow your alternative recommendation when it's your opportunity to. Councillor Smith, a speaker for this.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is an admirable motion. As you all know, I've been a keen gardener in Bunbury for many, many years. One of the bones of my life, if you excuse the pun, is that the amount of different weeds that have appeared in my garden over the years, I don't know where they come from, but all sorts of things that were never there 40 years ago. These flea bones were never there, and I'm always pulling them out of the footpath in front of my house. They are a pest. They do seed in a terrible way. They're invasive weeds, and I think we do need to do something about it, so I recommend that this motion is supported. Thank you.
Councillor Steele, nothing further. Speaker against, Councillor Quain.
I would like to make an alternate wording for point 3.
So Councillor Quain, what I suggest is speaking against this, foreshadow your alternative recommendation during that debate on why people shouldn't be voting for 3, and if you foreshadow what your point 3 will be, that may help in some way. Dealing with the whole item anyway. Yeah. We are taking them separately, but we'll deal with the whole point, whole thing now. So your opportunity to speak against now, Councillor Quain.
Is now?
Yes.
Yep. I would like to recommend an alternate wording for point 3 to support the re-establishment of BSAC, which is the Bunbury Environmental and Sustainability Advisory Committee. BSAC was a formal committee of council approximately 10 years ago in 2012. If BSAC was reinstated, the community and council would benefit as the committee supports the council's processes and policies. Council would receive the benefits of the committee of council, such as formal minutes, formal process of addressing community concerns, and the benefit to our environment and weed control. I encourage council to please support this amendment.
Okay. And Councillor Quain, is there a speaker for this recommendation? So we're dealing with the recommendation at the moment. We'll go through point 1, point 2 and point 3. So we are dealing with them. The discussion at the moment is around that point 3. If there is a speaker in support of the entirety, including point 3, Councillor Kozisek.
Sorry, thank you. After Mr Bischoff's talk to us at the annual electors meeting, I found out what the weed was called because it's everywhere. And every road, every intersection, every median strip, every garden, every pavement that you walk around, fleabane is there. It's obviously become a huge issue, and for some reason or another, it's not being controlled at the moment. And I would like to think that a committee of council might have more say, and we might know what's going on and be able to understand how to control it. We just need to do this in a better manner before it becomes an absolutely uncontrollable weed. Thank you.
Yeah, so that was, I was speaking in favour of the items.
I've been speaking in favour of the establishment of the committee for...
Okay,
Sorry, I'm confused.
Let's make it easier. Councillors, let's deal I'm going to put item 1, request the CEO provide advocacy letter.
Question, please, Mr Mayor.
Yes, Councillor McCreary.
Unfortunately,
Sorry, actually, Councillor McCreary, I've put number 1. I can't take further questions. So to make this easier, we're going to deal with item 1. All those in favour of item 1? That's carried. I'm going to put item 2, as moved by Councillor Smith and seconded by Councillor Steele. All those in favour of point 2? That's carried. Councillor Smith, was your moving for point 3 as well?
Yes, it was, Mr Mayor, because it does say re-establish the BSAC.
No, it does not support.
Sorry?
It does not support the re-establishment, Councillor Smith. So given the confusion, if you would like to retract your...
No, I think it... no, I don't agree with you.
Okay, thank you. So for the minute taker, Councillor Smith and Councillor Steele have moved item 1 and item 2, which have both been passed unanimously. We're dealing with point 3. We have a recommendation in front of us. Is there a mover for point 3? Councillor Yip. Is there a seconder for point 3? Councillor McCleary. Councillor Yip.
Thank you. Having sat on that, been in that community environmental reference group meeting a couple of times, which is the first time that I heard about fleabane from Vernon. He was very passionate in advising us all about the weed. And look, everyone brings their problems to the table. We have the friends of groups that are all talking about different weeds, dieback, lots of pests, but also the good work that is being done as well. I feel that, so we have the senior environmental officer in that room, and we have minutes taken. They're distributed, so they're available on request, I'm sure. I think that with the sustainability that we've just passed recently, that out of that will come a more focused advisory group that the community can get involved in the sustainability action part of that. I just think the environmental part is being handled at community level already and by the staff at the city. At the risk of having, you know, so many formal groups again, I understand it's good for council to know about these things, but I think this one is being handled well enough.
Thank you, Councillor Yip. Councillor McCleary.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Kozak mentioned council committee, and that has a lot more implications than just an ordinary committee. So I certainly wouldn't support, and I would ask that the CEO, through you, explain what a committee of council is. If there was a meeting, a recommendation to set up a committee of council for this, because I think it's a lot more involved with our people that we have. I support this not re-establishment because there, as you say, there is. The only letdown here is that we actually hadn't got the reports. So if we were to see those reports, we would be involved, we would understand more about what is in place at this point in time. So that, I believe that it's quite efficient. We have the gentleman on that committee already who's always been proactive, and I'm very proud to say that we've got a wonderful person in the community who's so actively involved in weeds, because it's pretty weedy. So I would ask that everyone do support number 3, because apart from the fact that we don't know a lot about what's already in place with our executives, that is the only downside of this particular recommendation. If you were to set up a VSAC again, you would be looking for other people, and we know that people going on committees, there's apologies, there's all sorts of things going on, and it would be more about, it would be a workshop type of committee without minutes, etc. So we have more control at this particular time, and by seeing the reports we can input more, and if we do need to use the rod, well then we can do so. Thank you.
Councillor McCreary, and just a question in there to the CEO in regards to the BSAC group. Could you maybe indicate there when that was a council committee of council and when it changed or why it was disbanded?
Through Mr Mayor, I think the agenda item indicates it was disbanded in 2012 and the new working group is about to celebrate its 10th anniversary as a working group. I think it's been already documented. The working group is made up of the passionate people across our community who have an interest in this, and possibly, if nothing else, where we're up to today is probably more a resourcing issue rather than needing another layer of governance. But the committee structures do require additional officer support, and they then do require at this stage recommendations to be made to council for consideration. So there would be some additional work, and I think our elected members are pretty familiar with the committee structures that are in place.
Thank you, CEO. Is there Councillor Andrew?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just so I can get a bit more clarity around the whole motion, I'd like to move to defer this for one round, please.
So you're moving that we defer point 3 does not support the re-establishment of BSAC given the Community Environmental Reference Group. Is there a seconder to that? Councillor Steele. Mover speaks, yes. Councillor Andrew.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I do thank Councillor Quain for putting forward this motion. However, just for a bit more clarity around this motion, it would be good if this can come back to a briefing session, just so I can get a bit more understanding when we want to talk about due diligence. Just for one round, it's important because if this gets voted down, my understanding is it can't come back again to council, so we seal its fate. So it is just an offer there to let this sit for one round and come back in 3 weeks' time. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no speaking against in this situation, so I'll put that deferral. Those in favour? Those against? 5 against. That item is deferred for one round. Thank you, councillors. 10.2.3. I believe that was probably Glenda who came in with all those shopping bags there. Glenda, you were approved to speak for this item. We have 5 minutes to present to council.
I'm just returning the Bunbury City rubbish, right, that's in South Bunbury, some of it. I went for a 7-minute walk in Bunbury and I picked up this rubbish in South Bunbury, and that's just on 7 minutes on one side of the Verge. Right, I don't know, haven't been to the council before. Does everyone have a copy of this deputation?
No.
You don't?
You read it.
Okay. All right. So, I would like to see the Bunbury City Council improve the aesthetics of the city of Bunbury, right? The aesthetics meaning how it looks, right? And my deputation is to improve the aesthetics of Bunbury. I'd like to see an increase of budget for weed control and management. If you go to South Bunbury, you'll see 2 billion fleabane weeds out near the trotting track, all around in South Bunbury, right? Because that's where I live, and I would like something done about it, right? The second one, mowing of untidy residential verges. That they have people that have their verges unmowed. I came to the City of Bunbury and made a complaint, asked for 2 verges to be mowed at the intersection of the Mangle Street lights. 120 days later, it's still not mowed. I went and saw 2 councillors. I wrote 5 emails, nothing. I'd like to change the procedures and policies around the mowing of residential verges that remain unmowed, especially on the arterial roads that are entering in Bunbury. So when you're coming in from South Bunbury, there's all these roads are just all manky. There's unmowed verges, there's weeds, there's thistles, there's rubbish, there's leaf litter on the side of the roads, right? I'd like to increase the budget to maintain and keep neat and tidy all the gardens and median strips in the city of Bunbury. When you come along the main drag there, there's all dead patches, there's some plants there, there's weeds. And some of the roundabouts are just full of weeds, I'm sorry, but they are, right? And so then I have just written a little, when I put my deputation in, I put in something with that. Don't know if you got a copy, but it says why the city of Bunbury looks manky.
The city of Bunbury is full of weeds. You need to just take a look around South Bunbury, Kerry Park, Withers, East Bunbury, Glen Padden, Glen Iris and Wollaston. Unmowed verges are everywhere. They're an eyesore, a fire hazard, and a source of many weed seeding. Even the main arterial roads look manky from unmowed verges, particularly in the southern entry into Bunbury, from Robinson Drive roundabout to Mangle Street Lights is terrible. Just have a look, I look at it every day. Existing Bunbury city gardens and median strips are not kept in a neat and tidy condition. The median strip gardens have huge spaces where plants have died, are not replaced and other plants need to be pruned. These median strips and parks and gardens are not weeded, watered or maintained properly in a timely manner. The rubbish and thick leaf debris covers verges and roadsides in many areas. Come and have a look at it in South Bunbury. I would like to feel proud of my city that I live in. At present I'm ashamed at how manky it looks. I'm sure thousands of residents would agree with me. The surrounding towns of Donnybrook and Bustleton look beautiful, clean and tidy, with well-kept verges and gardens, lots of trees and attractive parks. These towns are a pleasure to drive into and visit. Everywhere one looks in these towns, you will see beautiful trees, council gardens and bright flowers, mowed verges, clean streets free of roadside litter and leaf debris. Why can't the city of Bunbury emulate these aesthetics? And I was looking at these councillors, I haven't been here before. Some of them have been councillors for quite a long time who said they have. Do you think the city of Bunbury looks beautiful? Have a think. Okay, I would like to see the city of Bunbury fix this problem by addressing the root cause and inviting residents to help them bring these objectives into reality. First, we need a massive weed management program to get rid of all these around the traffic lights. There's weeds this high. I've had visitors that have come to stay with me who have commented on how, particularly on Robinson Drive, how it's just full of weeds. I'm sorry, but and rubbish, right? A 10-minute morning walk from my house to a friend's house to water their garden along the trotting track, in front of the trotting track. This is the rubbish, and there was 4 shopping trolleys as well. I didn't bring them, right? I'm just saying that there's a huge problem out there and we need to do something, right? Secondly, pick up all the rubbish on the roadside verges and drains. Thirdly, mow all the unmowed verges. To achieve this, the Bunbury City Council needs to change its policies and procedures pertaining to the mowing of residential verges. I came in here, asked when I paid my rates if I could have 2 verges mowed. Then 2 councillors asked, I wrote emails, nothing, right, at all. Fourthly, the maintaining of existing gardens and median strips around the city in a neat and tidy condition. The council needs to increase its budget, but also its work rostering and monitoring of ongoing garden maintenance throughout the city of Bunbury. This will ensure the gardens and median strips are kept fresh and vibrant and attractive. The regular weeding and replanting of dead plants, regular pruning, watering and the selection of hardy plants, easy care, low maintenance, ground covers, etc. will ensure these gardens will look well maintained and neat and tidy. And then I wrote down some suggestions of how the Bunbury City Council could achieve this.
Just quickly, Glenda, we're at your 5 minutes, so
okay.
I've given you a little bit extra. I'll just give you a bit of 30 seconds to summarise. Thank you.
Well, I would just like to see the aesthetics of Bunbury improved. And these councillors who've been here, I'm not talking to the new councillors, whoever you are, the ones that have been here for a long time, you know, does the city of Bunbury look beautiful? You're talking about attracting people, attracting businesses here. They're not going to want to come here and visit if it doesn't look good.
Thank you, Glenda.
I rest my case.
Thank you, Glenda. Take a seat then. Thank you for your motion from the electors' meeting, which we are dealing with now. Mover, Councillor Steele? Sure, let's just get it on the table first, Councillor Steele. So you're happy to move this recommendation?
Yep.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder to this recommendation? Councillor Andrew. Councillor Steele, you had questions.
I'm not going to speak against a motion that was passed quite a few years ago, but I do have a question about it. Is our verge gardening still outsourced or is it in-house? For example, the back beach or the median strips, we outsource that and we let it go from actually being in-house jobs. So I'd like to know what our situation is with those.
See ya.
Through Mr Mayor, I'll answer the best I can. So there are various elements of our landscape and open space that is done in-house, and there's various elements that were done through contracting. And we've only just had a conversation today about the more recent tender for mowing and slashing. The majority of our day-to-day maintenance of gardens and verges, my understanding is it's now done in-house. But there is an element of contracting that still the city covers, and I understand that's around about, could be up to $40,000 a month for the contracting component. But as we answered before, there are large numbers of various areas of open space. Robertson Drive was mentioned. At this stage, Robertson Drive is not under the control of the city, but I do accept what Mrs Kingdom has said, is there are areas of Bunbury that certainly need more maintenance than what they're currently getting.
Councillor Steele.
Okay, so years ago I actually voted against outsourcing, and I will stand by that today because I think we would do a better job if it came back under the city, would have more pride. We'd also employ more people, so I think this might lead on to us reassessing that, and so I would like everybody to support this motion, because I can see that we are failing in some parts of Bunbury where it doesn't look as pretty as it should be, and I would like to also take this a step further eventually and actually bring a lot of it back in-house.
Thanks, Councillor Steele. Councillor Andrew was a seconder. You're a seconder? Take a seat, please, Councillor Quain, unless you have a question.
Item 3 of this motion,
Yes.
Will this review come to council?
Councillor Quain, and this will be an internal level. I'm sure the outside of council we can ask that discussion to be had and ask questions there. But at this stage, I wouldn't envision that this would be an operational matter and the review would be done internally. I wouldn't suspect it would do. Theo?
Through Mr Mayor, only insofar as if there's additional resourcing required within the budget, that would need to come to council as part of that process. So council would determine the available budget allocations for that particular, or for those tasks through normal budget process.
I'd imagine that'll happen during some budget discussions. Councillor Quain? Councillor Andrew, seconder. Anything to add?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And I do acknowledge Glenda's comments, Mr Mayor. They're comments that have been echoed around the city for a little while, but I also acknowledge the hard work that the maintenance crew have been doing. I do understand that there is work afoot to bring in a scheduler, which will help increase efficiency within the organisation. It is very hard when you look at the assets that we do have. We have 326.93 kilometres of roads and verges that the city owns and maintains, and God knows something similar in the way of footpaths. So it is very hard to understand that the resources are outstretched, but it does highlight the fact that we do need to do something, and possibly we do need to do something a little bit better. The city is our shopfront, and if we want people to come and buy from our shopfront and invest in the shopfront, we want it to look as good as it possibly can. So I do ask councillors to support this motion, but also keep in the back of their mind that during budget review time that there is opportunity there for us to make some inroads and allocate funds towards some of these motions. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Is there a speaker against? Councillor McCreary?
Yes and no, Mr Mayor.
Is that a question or is that a speaker against?
No, it's certainly, I am concerned that, and the reason why I'm speaking against it, there's no mention of residents' responsibility in here, and that is a concern. We can all sit back and say, it's your fault, you did it, and this is childish, and this is what we're saying here. There's no mention that we could educate the residents to look after their property, to weed their area around there, and I'm concerned about that, because if we put something out like this, we are going to get people sit back and say, well, that's good because it's a responsibility. That's not my responsibility to pick up that newspaper that person threw on the ground yesterday and I'm walking around. So we're pointing the finger just at our local executives and their workers that they're not stopping and picking up rubbish. And really, it's the responsibility of our residents to do this as well. We need to do it as a team. And I would like to see if we could have a number 5 to say that we would put out some education of community, social consciousness on cleaning up our area in the town. Thank you.
Speaker 4, Councillor Steck.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, as Councillor Steele would know, that for a long time I have also been campaigning for lots of maintenance on the arterial roads. I mean, we have a look at Strickland Street. We upgraded that about 4 years ago, and a bulk of it, you see reticulation. I do note that, as Councillor Andrews said, we're getting a new scheduler, but it has been an ongoing maintenance issue for quite some time, particularly on arterial roads. So I value what the Speaker has to say. Bunbury does need to clean ourselves up. You have a look at Rockingham and the makeover that that's had. You go into the main drive in there and you go, wow, this place looks really great. So we do need to create a wow factor. So I do support for the CEO and the team to come back to Council with a larger budget to do exactly that, because I note that staff are under pressure to utilise the monies that they do get, and part of that, I believe, in what I will say, is this key document here, our Bunbury Geograph Sub-Regional Strategy. Bunbury will become the Bunbury Metro strategy, and it has been adopted by the Planning Commission, and growth of the community, recognising the value of the city of what it is, to mature itself into a larger city for Bunbury Metro. Support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Steck. Is there a speaker against? Councillor Steele, anything further?
Yep, it was like the stars aligned last week when this came up, because about 6-7 years ago I put through a motion. I wrote to, at the time he was the Mayor of Vincent, City of Vincent, was John Carey, and they actually do adopt a verge, and I tried to get that in council, but I was sort of poo-pooed because it was going to cost too much. But it would also help with the verges. So basically what they do there is they provide verge and mulch for people to change their verges to save on mowing and actually beautify it. But they also then give a voucher for native gardening voucher, so it would actually use less water. So that was 6 years ago. Fast forward 6 years, if we'd done that back then, we would have a city and people that either renters that can't afford to do these sort of things. We can't just say educate the people. They might not actually be able to afford it. They might have restrictions on what their tenants can do. So I would actually also like to revisit that again to come budget time. I'd like to put that in there. But that would also help our weed control. So, but at this moment, I would like us all to please support this.
Thank you, Councillor Steele. I'll put the recommendation. Those in favour, please indicate. Those against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 10.2.4, the Durkar Australia. Mr. Stubber. Thank you, Paul. Thanks for your patience. You have 5 minutes.
If I may, just before I start, I've practiced a couple of times. It's about 6.5 minutes. If I could,
I've been slightly lenient, Mr. Stubber. So
thank you very much. And I do understand. I'd like none of the councillors to fall asleep on this matter. I do believe you've had a fair old slash at it today for an hour or so. I'll just a couple of closing comments we believe worth providing for the elected members. We also, for a matter of interest, we have 2 letters. I have them here, but I won't furnish them. But one from Mick Murray some time ago and one from Alana McTurnan recently, just clarifying that this is specifically a matter not between the state and anyone else. It's specifically between the proponent, Bunbury Car Club, and the City of Bunbury. I believe there was some discussion that it may be a state matter or something or other. So, but we're just simply reiterating it's not a takeover bid. the proponents have advocated, as I said, right from the beginning, to work with the BCC, the Bunbury Car Club, and we've given them every opportunity to come along and be a part of the process. What we have noticed is being involved in this process of approval for the museum. We noted how the executive managed the council with an array of conflicting information, making it more difficult than it should be for councillors to come to a meaningful conclusion. Councillor McCleary, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe you raised a question on Tuesday night, and it was, why are we here? And you posed that to the executive, and the response was in two parts. We're acting as a mediator, as in the city, and the city is the meat in the sandwich. We suggest it's far from accurate to suggest that that's the case. A more accurate answer would be because the city lease provides for a redevelopment option in favour of the city. If you'd be kind enough to have a look at just that handout number 1 there, we understand this clause is written to all of the city community leases for the very reason, and again we understand this clause was exercised to redevelop the Campana kiosk. Councillor Andrews, please again, correct me if I'm wrong, you asked a question regarding adjoining landowners on Tuesday night. If you look at handout 2, the reason the proponents haven't gone out for any reason whatsoever is because, again, the city lease deals with it. It's well and truly covered. We've not covered any adjoining landowners because at this point, until the council elects to move the whole issue forward, there's been no reason. Within the lease, we're aware of what the car park is and what part it plays in the redevelopment. And some time back, I do believe that document, which is just a public document and given to us, was provided to all the councillors. And the page 1, you may not have it with you, but the legal opinion, the city does not have unilaterally the ability to terminate the lease. I suggest that is actually 100% incorrect, because it does. It is clearly prescribed in the lease that the city can take charge of any asset and redevelop it. This would apply to the likes of the squash courts, the rec centre, the Bunbury Bowling Club and various sporting assets. Any City of Bunbury asset with a community lease contains that redevelopment clause, and it's there for the benefit of the city. The legal opinion, page 2, the legal opinion, the Bunbury Car Club could seek, it says, could seek an injunction, amongst other things, to stop the city acting if the lease was legally terminated. I'm not sure, Mr. CEO, if that's perhaps a typo. Should that say illegally terminated?
You don't need to answer that, CEO. Continue on, Paul.
Sorry?
We don't need to answer that. It's addressing the council.
I would suggest it was a typo. We wouldn't think that anyone could act against something if it was legally terminated. If illegally, one would suggest that would be the case. The legal opinion on part 3, the first 3 boxes are ticked. Basically, the council just requires to give 12 months notice. There is no compensation by the city required, and the improvements become assets of the city. And just appreciating again, we've already talked about the value of the assets out there. The club hasn't actually contributed a great deal to them. The assets were put there by some previous operators, and the club never had to actually pay for them, certainly in any full way. And then with regards to the balance of that, the council has its own interpretation of the legal opinion, suggesting that a $20 million redevelopment would be okay, but then advising as long as it involved a substantial physical redevelopment to an agreed specification with adequately guaranteed finance, that too would be okay. So the proponents, of course, will provide all documented requirements as was provided for the museum. And the SWOT analysis, with the threats, there was further state financial support, unlikely as a threat. I'm just not sure, we couldn't understand why the executive officer would suggest this to council. One would suggest, given the level of recent state support and the proponent's injection of $3 million that the state may just add to the facility.
Paul, just given
added.
based on the previous speakers, I'll just, that 5 minutes, I'll just allow you a quick time to summarise there. Thank you, Paul, as I've done previously.
We'll skip a few. I guess one of the things that's also been put up is that in a weakness scenario is that the DCA is driven by a single individual, and it appears the executive's actually struggling for weaknesses there. The ladies and gentlemen, you know from the beginning, the team behind the BGM, which Council received an update on recently, is a 5-person team, and it's a 5-person team behind the Dirt Car Australia proposal. Paul Stubber is simply the advocate for that particular proposal, that's all. Why are we here? Mrs McCleary, Councillor Curry, is because the elected members, you have your right. With respect to anyone in this room, if the Bunbury Car Council the Bunbury Car Club will instigate change and provide 40 events per year, if anyone seriously believes that, I think we're seriously misguided. I think if that's the case, ladies and gentlemen, I'd just like to thank you very much again. You know, too often these matters just get tangled up in the politics of today. What you can do for the people of tomorrow is true statesmanship. You have the opportunity to rise above the politics of the moment and initiate the very first serious investment develop opportunity for 22. There's 57 million reasons, as you're aware, and a broader community base to appeal to this, and that's the reason Council should direct the MOU to encourage the dialogue between the parties. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Paul.
Cheers.
Take a seat. As indicated, councillors, as a request, we will take these items separately, and for clarification purpose, I'll take a mover and seconder for each item. So, item 1, acknowledge the receipt of the proposal received from Dirt Car Australia relating to the redevelopment of the Bunbury Speedway. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Andrew, seconder Councillor McCleary. Is there anyone wanting to speak against that item? I'll put item 1. Those in favour? That's carried. Thank you. Point 2, acknowledges the long-term lease in place between the City and Bunbury Car Club Incorporated. Could I have somebody move that? Councillor Plum, a seconder. Councillor McCleary.
If you take the "and" out, please, sir.
Between acknowledge that there is a long-term... yeah, thanks. Sorry, minute taker. Are you able just to remove "and"? And that's seconded now, Councillor McCleary. Thank you. Is there likely to be any debate on this one, councillors? Do you have a question, Councillor? All good? Oh, sorry. I'll put that. All those in favour? That is carried. Okay, councillors, that's the difficult one out of the way. Item 3. Do I have a mover for that item, councillors? Councillor Steck, is there a seconder? Councillor Gassop.
I have an amendment, if I may, in due course, please.
Let's hear your amendment, Councillor Smith.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mayor, sorry, I do believe that movement seconds have the right to speak to the item before other debate or motions.
Thanks, Councillor Plum. I'll just clarify that. CEO. Maybe through to the Manager of Governance.
Thanks. Through you, Mr. Mayor, there's no written rule in the standing orders for any order in that regard. So in terms of taking an amendment.
Yeah, it's on the table. Considering that's how I dealt with it earlier, Councillor Plum, for transparency, we'll have a look at this amendment. If I deem that it's conflicting to the resolution, we'll deal with it as an alternative. But Councillor Smith, let's hear what your amendment is.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hope this doesn't happen, but I would add that should either party decline to be involved in the proposed meetings, the City is to take no further action on the matter, and all parties are to be informed of that outcome.
So, Councillor Smith, and this is after the rest of point 3, as written, is that what you're suggesting?
It's an addition to the end of
Yep.
3.
It's on the screen now, Councillor Smith. Could you indicate if that was what you were envisioning.
Yes, Mr Mayor. Pardon?
Can I query that, please, Mr Mayor, just to clarify my cloudy brain?
Sure.
So is Councillor Smith suggesting that we add that to the three, that resolve,
Yes.
resolve to invite plus resolves to... Oh, I see. Yep,
Yep.
I got
So
it.
can you
Yes,
just
good.
maybe
Thank you.
just
Yep.
scroll all the way down a minute ago, Liam? So this is the amendment as written. I'm happy to take that as an amendment. So if there is a seconder to this, Councillor Giles probably. So again, councillors, if this is now what we're voting on as amendment, which would then revert back to that being included in the initial commentary. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It has been a difficult process, and I would like to see it resolved to the satisfaction of both parties. But at some stage, we have to say we can't keep going on like this. So I would urge both parties to get together and see if there is some way forward for them. If not, I just think that an end has to come to it. I would prefer that they got together and spoke about it and tried to sort it out, because I think we all are here for the benefit of this city, and anything that improves the amenity and anything else that enhances the city, we'd be for it. But it has to be mutual and it has to be negotiated. Thank you.
Seconder, Councillor Giles.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I agree with Councillor Smith. I think this has gone on for far too long and there's no agreement between the two parties at this stage. And I think we're not in the business of mediating. We're in the business of running the city. And this is something that we shouldn't get too involved in. So I think we give them an opportunity. If one declines, that's the end of the matter for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a speaker against this amendment?
So,
Councillor McCleary.
I think this is too confusing. We can't have 1 foot on one part of the land and then a foot on the other. We have to decide where we stand on this. And this is a really bad precedent. When you read the whole thing together, any lease that we have with any not-for-profit becomes a little bit shaky because of this particular motion that we've got up here. So I would suggest that we just vote down, if you choose, not go half this and half that. We know we've had so many discussions, we've had so much information, and what bubbles up to the very top is no, no, no. How many ways do you spell no? And this is what it is. It is a shame, it's disappointing, it's whatever you want to call it. But the bottom line here is, when you look at the three resolutions here, acknowledge the receipt of the proposal, acknowledge there is a long time lease, and just vote down, not go bet each side of what's there or support it. So I don't believe that we should add that little amendment. Thank you.
Thank you,
Be
Councillor.
brave.
Thank you, Councillor McCleary. Is there a speaker for this amendment? So, Councillor Smith, I will ask you to close, just to clarify, to make sure everyone is. So this amendment is approved. It forms part of the recommendation, which we then go back to going. If it's not approved, we revert back to the original recommendation. So just so everyone's clarified and clear on that. Councillor Smith, to close out on this amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Look, I'm sorry, I disagree with Councillor McCleary. I don't think it does that. I don't think it sends a mixed message. I just think that this issue needs to be sorted one way or the other, and I believe by talking and working it out, but it has to come to an end at some stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. I'll put this amendment as written. Those in favour, please indicate. Those against? Okay, 4 against. That amendment now forms part of the motion. So minute taker, are you able to include that now all in part 3? So we come back to the original motion now, which is that point 3. Councillors, we are with Councillor Steck.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, this is really just a motion to get two community members together to talk. There's no point in thinking that this motion is going to kick anybody out, force anybody off the land in 12 months' time. It doesn't suggest any of that. What it suggests is having a look at the facility for the Greater Bunbury metropolitan area, because that is now who we are known. This has been a long time coming to have a look at the real benefits of what the Speedway and the clubs, the sporting clubs out there can build for a Bunbury metropolitan motorplex. And I do believe that there's been great work from everybody involved up until now when the communications are breaking down. I spoke with a lifetime member of the Speedway and he said to me he was all for it because they needed a cash injection. It needs more money than just what the community can get out of grants, the club itself, and the philanthropy that they have in the membership at the moment. This is just simply saying, what if, how can we do it better? Let's see what we can deliver together. There needs to be an upgrade in all the toilets. There needs to be an upgrade in both canteens.
Point of order. We're actually just talking about the MOU, not about what the actual facility needs.
Well,
So
Mr. Mayor,
to take a seat by this. Your point of order is on relevance, I'm assuming, Councillor Steele. I'm going to allow Councillor Steck to continue because they're talking about it ties into point 3, talking about what potentials they might have in the benefit for out there. So I'll continue. Continue, Councillor Steck.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. What I was referring to was about cash injection, improvement, and more philanthropic, get my word out, sorry, philanthropic capacity with more people within the community. It is not about a takeover. It is not about forcing people out. It's saying, well, look at the facilities. Let's see how we can do this better. Let's see how we can increase things more. As an events committee person, I know this is irrelevant, but events could be there in an open area, outdoor facility, which we don't have. I know that, sorry. I had to go there. I had to. But look, this is, as I say, I'm not going to repeat myself again. If it breaks down, the city doesn't have any implications and everybody else just has to walk away. Simple.
Thank you, Councillor Steck. Councillor Gassab.
I'll be pretty brief too, Mr. Mayor. This number 3, executive recommendations, was already pretty limpy and has been watered down even more. So in the end, all that's happening here is inviting two parties to talk, and now they don't even have to. But I was impressed by the props that Glenda brought in, and I actually have a prop myself. And I'll tell you about it a little bit later.
Sir, speak to the Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Gassab. You have to address myself.
The councillors?
Not
Okay.
Not
Okay. I just got a pay rise so I can probably start focusing on doing those things properly. Right. So what we have is effectively, now that's changed even less, a non-binding request to have an MOU. So it's not actually enforcing an MOU, it's actually asking both parties to create an MOU. So the possibility of, if these guys, these parties get together, may result in some miracle that actually everybody might be happy with in the end. Sorry, I shouldn't look that way. It's quite amazing what happens when you get groups together that are very passionate and very keen to develop our community, put aside their differences and see if they can actually work together for the benefit of our people, our community. So I guess if we don't support this, well, if I don't support this one, I feel I'd be preempting a negative outcome. I wouldn't be given that a chance whatsoever. So I'm supporting it for that reason. Over the course of the last few weeks, Mr. Mayor and councillors, I've seen some pretty ugly things in relation to this issue or this matter or the recommendation. And I won't highlight what they are, but some of them are quite serious. There's people very upset as well, a lot of trauma. And at the other end, there's people who've been on the receiving end of some bad things. So our family came out from a place where there was war, okay? And war is destruction. And what we have here at the moment, from my observations, is a war, okay? We also know the peace having come to Australia and the prosperity that it brings. So, I went to my mum's place this morning, who knows about war and peace, and picked this olive branch. So I would like to extend this olive branch, if I may, through Mr. Mayor, to the people involved, and I hope they would accept this olive branch to make peace, sit down, talk together, which is what this resolution would be asking. In this case, the olive branch, to me, represents what we're asking in this resolution, and certainly now it's been amended. That's all we're asking. Hold out the olive branch, ask these parties to talk together, and see what miracle can develop. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gassett. Is there a speaker against? Councillor Plum.
I had no intention of speaking to this item, but councillors, I guess probably one thing that's glaringly obvious to us right here is that this motion, point 3, has actually already been fulfilled. The executive and the councillors and the parties have already been invited to come and have this discussion. It's been made clear that the parties don't wish to come together and do this, and that's perfectly okay. I want to acknowledge that. I think it's perfectly okay for people to have disagreement. I think what is sad, and the comment that Councillor Gassett has made, is that already in this process there has been some very, I won't describe it, but just, not the coming together that I think we all look for in a community like Bunbury. And where people can come together, it's great. And when they can't, mediation may be required. I don't think it's the city's role to provide that mediation in this case, and this item does implicate the city to provide that mediation. I would love for there to be an MOU. I would love for these parties to work together and we didn't have to exercise this right. And I acknowledge the passion, Mr. Stubber, and those around him and the committee from Dirt Car Australia. It's an exceptional offer that they've put on the table. I think it's really, really passionate. But I think there needs to be respect for our fellow man in our community, particularly in community groups where really so many people find relationship and community and support from one another in those groups. And the last thing that we as leaders in our city should be doing is facilitating or encouraging any kind of further division. That would be sad if in any way, shape or form that would happen out of this, and I do think already there is some of that fragmenting our community, which is sad. But just further, I just want to acknowledge that, the proposal is outstanding, and I wish there was another way, but I do also suggest to you councillors, both parties are free to go and seek mediation of their own and work out a solution, and potentially even there is a conflict for the city to provide that, given that the city is the landlord essentially. So that would be my comments, councillors, and I hope that there is another way to do this, but I would suggest we vote this down.
Speaker 4, Councillor Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Following on from Councillor McCleary, I don't actually have a speech written for this motion, and that is because my decision on which way to vote has changed constantly. And it has changed this afternoon, I think, about 5-6 different ways. And I will thank the Deputy Mayor for her amendment, because it was the only way I felt comfortable that we could finally get a resolution and cease the city's time in this motion moving forward. Firstly, Mr Mayor, I'd just like to recommend that through you, the community remembers that councillors are here because we're civic-minded. We're here because we're members of the community, and we are trying desperately to do the best thing that we can with the information that is given to us and with the support of our networks moving forward. It is very unfortunate, Mr Mayor, about some of the comments that have been made, and I would hope that in reflection, all three parties, including the city, sort of look back on this process and have some learnings from it. I acknowledge, as many do, the great work of Dirt Car Australia and the proposal. It is a great proposal. I also recognise the amazing work that the Bunbury Car Club have done in getting to a 5-star rating, one of only 3 tracks, and that they now have a vision. I'm frustrated, as many councillors are, that we have come to this point. I'm frustrated that the car club didn't come to us 3 months ago when they were first invited and given us the information, because I truly believe we would not have gotten to this point. I hope truly that both parties can find some middle ground. We probably already know their answer, but now there is a resolution before us to put a stop to this. The Dirt Car Australia's proposal will bring economic benefits to the city. However, what the Bunbury Car Club have done and the investments that they are making are also bringing economic benefits to the city. There is multiple leases which have all expressed to us that they would like to be involved in anything else moving forward. So, in closing, I hope that the Bunbury Car Club realise that any support from Dirt Car Australia would also provide economic benefits to their members, will put more people in the streets of Bunbury, which will in doubt support businesses and business owners of the car club. But I also hope that Dirt Car Australia recognise the lease and the long-term lease which Council acknowledges here, and that, in my opinion, there is no appetite to renege on that lease. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andrew. Is there a speaker against this recommendation? Councillor McCleary.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It was brought to my attention that I did ask, why are we here, meaning why is the city, and the answer being that we're going to mediate this particular MOU. A mediator is someone who needs to be unbiased, objective, and not be financially involved. How can we be the mediator of this particular number 3? We also have the not-for-profits versus private enterprise. Both have very different objectives and visions. So I can't see the two. We have been told over and over again, no, 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 we don't want an MOU with private enterprise. They have an absolutely amazing, you're quite right, Councillor Andrews and Councillor Plum, it is an amazing development project. The vision is amazing, and I don't doubt would work with the people that are behind it. Look at the motor car museum that they have over there. I have no doubts with that. But the people with whom they wish to get into bed with don't want them to get into bed with them. Okay? So let's respect that. And maybe if we step back and then later on they may look at, well, hang on a minute, there was a few pointers in there that were quite good. Perhaps we'll go back and we'll start our own conversation with the funding, etc. I really do believe that we cannot be a mediator when we're also leasing the property. We are too involved, and the community, no matter what we do or what we say, will say, oh yeah, but. So please, vote against number 3. Thank you.
Is there a speaker for? tell you what, Councillor, yep, I saw you wanted to speak before, so I'll speak for it to give you that option. Councillors, as has been said, this has been a very interesting discussion and a very interesting time, certainly one of the more interesting times I've had in my few months in this role. I was in favour of the executive recommendation as it stood. However, I will accept the amendment that now is there. The journey has been on, and the conversations around hearing no, we have heard those. We have heard those, but there's also been a lot of work in that time. There's been a lot of discussions around that, and just obviously today and over the last few weeks, we've probably seen the car club coming back to the city with what they're looking at doing. So I think conversation is always good. Yes, it obviously has had some difficult times and difficult moments through this period. However, it has allowed to see some very good and positive conversations about what could come out there. And this is going on, much more than what we've started here with the proposal. We're talking about all kinds of user groups and talking about all other things that could happen. So I think there is an opportunity for this conversation to continue. If we vote against this, I think we're just putting an end to it and saying, well, the work that's been done is now finished and let's not go any further. If we vote in favour of this, we're saying, let's ask the question one more time and get a formal response that we, on document and through council, we have. Once we have that, and the way that is written now, if that is no more further action to be taken, we're done, we're finished. But it allows one more opportunity, and I note we did receive an email today saying we're happy to discuss with all members, so in which they said that they're willing to listen to Dirklar's contributions. It obviously didn't say about their proposal, but is that an option that goes? Will this discussion allow, removals of the proposal or other possibilities that could happen? And if either party aren't happy to come in, then away we go, and that's the thing. But I think, and it was interesting because someone spoke to me recently about being in sales, and you always continue to try and see what can happen. You don't get there from the first time, but you push it and you continue and see where you get to, and that's what I'm looking to do. I have no intention to looking to go in and push a lease or push anybody out, and we've made that quite clear. We're not looking to do that. We're looking to continue this conversation. That's all we're looking to do, in my opinion. I think we should be brave enough to do that and write out to them and say, let's meet and let's chat. That's all we're asking to do at this stage. And then formally, we have a decision either way, and this council has that direction, and that council will give that direction to myself and the CEO. And whatever that direction is, we'll continue and we'll respect and move forward from there. That's why I'll be voting in favour of this recommendation. Is there a speaker against? Councillor, yep.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I just want to ask everyone one question, and that is, as councillors, whichever way you vote, what will our reputation be at the end of it? Thank you.
Is there a speaker for? I could take that as a question, so is there a speaker against? If that's the case, Councillor Steck.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you for your input, so eloquently put, by the way. I would just like to start with the front of our documentation. Every council meeting we have, we are community, we are open, we are brave. We work together to achieve great outcomes, hence the olive branch of Councillor Gassett. And the Mayor is quite right. This is an open discussion and a moving way forward so that the community can have a look at what better facilities may come, better management ways, more sensible business approaching management capacity, exactly as the lifetime member of the Speedway Club told me on the telephone. He said to me, there has been too many years for over the lifetime of the existence of the facility that it is constantly putting band-aids on bigger problems. He said to me, there needs to be a far more strategic approach to what it can get in the form of venue entertainment, visitor numbers, and also tourism and greater participation through motorsports, through all the persons that are out there, which is including the motorcycle club, the go-kart club, and etc. There are also avenues for greater potential for more races to occur through the companionship of all of the clubs combined. They have a stronger way forward in getting the money that is required to upgrade the facilities in all the function rooms, club rooms, toilets, canteens, outdoor eating areas, and even greater grandstands. And as I said, greater events as an outdoor entertainment venue. I can see great opportunity, and I hope that the two clubs actually ask all the other clubs to come on board and speak together about the MOU and what benefits for the rest of the community and the region we can develop all together. So I ask councillors to please vote for this motion, and please, if any of the communications start to break down, I urge you to start to use facilitations of a facilitator between the two of you and create a dialogue through the written word. Thank you. Please support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Steck. I'll put the recommendation point 3. All those in favour, please indicate. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep. Those against? Councillor Steele, Councillor McCreary, Councillor Yip against. 3 against. That motion is carried as written. Councillors, we move to item 10.3.2. Councillor Gassard pulled out 10.3.1. Councillor, let's get this on the table first. Is there a mover for this motion or recommendation? Councillor Yip, Councillor Gassard. Councillor Gassard, did you have a question, or are you speaking against this?
Sorry, Mr Mayor, I'm not speaking against, but I would like to take the opportunity to mention some stats about universities.
Should have got you to move it, really. Councillor Yip, you've moved. Councillor, would you like to retract your movement? Yes. Is there a mover for this motion?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Gassard. Is there a seconder? Councillor Yip. Sorry about that, councillors. Councillor Gassard.
Being brave and holding out the olive branch is working already. Mr Mayor, I don't have anything prepared, but again, what I have got is previous research I've undertaken on the issue of universities, tertiary education, and including TAFE education. What I just want to do is, I suppose, acknowledge the memorandum of understanding, even though it's non-binding. That's a good step to collaborate and do research together. Potentially the strategic community plan could probably be done by Edith Cowan rather than a consultant. Anyway, the stats I'd like to just highlight, and the reason I've done all this work in the past is I really believe that education in our region can create the biggest economic boom to benefit our community. And the lack of education now is actually causing harm, tertiary education. So it's a couple of stats. Out of the population tree derived from the ABS, what it shows is in our region, in the Bunbury region, out of 80,000 people, there's less younger people per 1,000 per capita than there is in Perth. And I won't give you all the numbers, but that converts out of 80,000 to 5,200 people. That should be 5,200 people, young persons, who theoretically should be studying, working and living in the southwest region, who are simply not present. This figure does not allow for compounding population expansion should these people have remained in the southwest. Most research shows that young adults prefer to study and work in proximity to their parental home, and given the opportunity, they will prefer to study close by. Right. The southwest region doesn't offer that much choice except for limited current courses. Hence the mass exodus of young adults when they leave to study in the metropolitan areas, Perth mainly. Invariably, then they find jobs and settle there instead of as they become more familiar with the city and they form ties there in their formative years. So fairness, in Perth, your kids, if you're living in Perth, can walk across the road and go to university or more diverse type education. In our region, the family unit is torn to educate their children. It is worth noting that Perth universities intentionally target a portion of the student intake from our region, from the regions, and their target is 10% of all their intake, which is 2,000 people per year from the regions. Now I've got examples here of other geographical locations in Australia where it compares demographically to our area. So the people that say it can't be done, the stats prove that it can. Right. Nearly finished. When Don Punchworth, SWDC CEO, he produced the Southwest Regional Blueprint. And that blueprint states that 16 out of 100 people, and young people in the Southwest, undertake further tertiary education, including TAFE. 16. In Perth, it is 50%, 50%, 3 times more that do tertiary education. I'll read it because it's highlighted here. This is woefully low, contrasted with the 50% of school leavers in metropolitan areas that head to university. A massive gap. So the research here proves that, to me, who is an investor, there's a massive opportunity in the southwest, in the Bunbury region, to educate our kids. Retaining all those people here, imagine what that would do if they want to live here, buy houses here, have careers here, if we have the right careers. And this stuff works hand in hand with careers. That's all I want to say, Mr. Mayor, but I am going to be raising this in more detail later on at different opportunities in the council. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Councillor Gassop. Councillor Yip. Is there any speakers against? I'll put the recommendation. Those in favour? That's carried. Sorry, Councillor Plum. Do have to be quick. 10-3-2. Councillors, this has come out. Why did this come out? Oh, Councillor Andrew, that's why. Happy to move that, Councillor Andrew. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Quain. Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We got this item very late, and after reading it in great depth, there's a lot of things that need to be fixed before it will be fit to go to the community. So can we see this again before it goes to community? Because I'm not happy with the way the document is at the moment. It's a lot of typos, errors, etc.
Thanks, Councillor Giles. I believe this is endorsing that this draft, as a draft, goes out for public consultation. So you're suggesting we don't send it out for public consultation? This is asking the public for comments. Are you suggesting?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I don't think it's fit to go out at this stage. The version I saw certainly had, things that weren't sentences, wrong words, wrong places.
Sure. Grab a seat, Councillor Giles. So is that correct, CEO? If this is approved just now, this will be going out for public comment from now, or will there be any changes before it does?
Through Mr. Mayor, so Councillor Giles has given me a copy with some of her concerns. I'm happy to take those concerns on board. Some of them are more language rather than corrections that are required, but we can have a look at maybe changing some of those. Happy to take this on board, have a look at those, but the intention was for this document to be distributed. We'll do one more sanity check, if you like, and make sure it's clean, and forward that to elected members prior to it being distributed publicly.
Councillor Giles, that'll be fine, but that won't come back here before endorsement?
No, come to me so that
it can be sent out? Sure.
And also just a comment, late items like that, this is what happens, so I'd really prefer to not have items dumped on us at the last minute. Thank you.
I'll take that as a question that you would like, that we do not, a question anyway. Councillor Andrew. There was a seconder from Councillor Quain. A seconder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Quain. Firstly, it's a great opportunity, and sorry, thank you for entertaining my words tonight. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge and thank all the participants who took part in this. There was over 1,000 participants who took part in the Strategic Community Plan, and it's only right that they took the time, so we take the time here just to highlight the fact. And as always, thank you to the team that has worked hard under the Director for getting this draft for public consultation, acknowledging that Councillor Giles' suggestions for amendments. Being the highest level document in the organisation, again, it is just an opportune time to highlight the fact that the Strategic Community Plan is the #1 document that comes from communities' inputs and interests. This plan is a roadmap developed not for the interests of those in this chamber, but by the community, for the community, with almost 1 in 16, maybe to 1 in 20 eligible respondents who took part in the plan. And it gives us the clearest picture of the wants and needs of the community. I'll just finish very quickly with a quote from Margaret Wheatley. "There is no power for change greater than a community discovering what it cares about." Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Andrew. Councillor Quain. Oh, there you are. Anything to add, Councillor Quain, as seconder?
I concur with Councillor Andrews. This is our overarching community plan, and I acknowledge the effort of the executive and staff and also the community that have put their time into this strategic community plan. I ask Councillor to please endorse this motion, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Quain. Is there a speaker against this, councillors? Sure.
Definitely not against, Mr Mayor, but I'd just like to ask the question of whether this strategic community plan that we've adopted the previous MOU with the Edith Cowan University can be considered to be something that they could do in collaboration with us in the future.
CEO?
No, I won't say that. Generally speaking, the document has been prepared with, I guess, expert advice, but there's no reason why we could not, Mr Mayor, talk to ECU about assisting us with some of our strategic documents as the partnership grows, and perhaps there are some expertise within ECU that would help us get a great outcome. So happy to contemplate how we might do that into the future.
Thank you. I'll put the motion, councillors. All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you very much. I believe that brings us to a close, Liam. I declare this meeting closed. Thank you all for your patience and your discussions. Good meeting. Could we have 2 minutes when there's no one else in the room? Just give us 2 minutes.